Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Whispers of the Unknown podcast. Of course, I'm joined by my girlfriend, Kylie Cook. Kylie, how you doing today?
Woohoo!
Woo!
Ready to be here, Gage.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about the Villisca Ax Murders. Do you know anything about this before we begin talking?
I do.
What? What do you know?
The whole family is murdered in their house by axes.
Woo!
I think some of them are actually found in the barn.
Huh.
Anyway,
okay.
What's this book again?
Oh, it's called... Thanks for reminding me. It's called Unsolved Murders, True Crime Cases Uncovered by Amber Hunt and Emily Thompson. I just found out that Emily Thompson actually has a podcast of her own.
Cool.
Called Morbidology.
Oh, I was about to say, girl, because I thought you were going to say morbid. And I was like, girl, I know she ain't. I'm morbid.
Well, I looked it up to see if it was like under the Morbid Network, and it's
not.
Yeah.
Morbidology.
And then the other one
Study
is...
of all things morbid.
Amber Hunt is the host of the true crime podcast, Accused. You ever heard of it?
I think I have, actually. I've not listened to it, but I feel like I've heard it before.
Maybe we'll have to listen sometime.
Perhaps.
All right, so let's get right into it then. The Villisca Ax Murders. The Ass Murders. The Ax Murders. It was a quiet Monday morning on June 10th, 1912, in the farming town of Villisca, Iowa. A woman named Mary Peckham was bustling about, doing her chores when she noticed an odd stillness at about 7 a.m. This would work so much better if I could read.
This would be so much better of a podcast if you were actually literate.
Yeah, it would be. Anyway, normally by this time, Mary's neighbors would be bustling too. Instead, aside from the impatient mooing of cows waiting to be milked in the field, their house was silent. Ooh. Ooh. The house next door belonged to the popular and prosperous Moore family. Parents Josiah B. and Sarah and their 4 children, 11-year-old Herman, 9-year-old Catherine, 7-year-old Boyd, and 5-year-old Paul.
I love the name Herman.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway.
With that many kids, the home was rarely quiet. Worried, Mary called JB's brother Ross, who used his key to get inside. He saw blood and asked her to fetch the town marshal. Ooh. Marshal Henry Hank Horton.
I love a good alliteration.
Yeah.
Henry Hank Horton.
Was similarly shaken after walking through the silent house. Somebody murdered in every bed, he muttered as he went to fetch Dr. J. Clark Cooper, the first physician to examine the scene. Inside the house, the entire Moore family had been brutally slain, as had 2 young friends of the family, Lena and Ina Stillinger.
I was going to say, I think it's a J.
The killer had wielded an axe, using the blade to kill his victims and then the handle to bludgeon their faces beyond recognition.
Ay.
Before covering the heads with bedcloths.
Yeah.
The mutilation was so severe that one Iowa newspaper misidentified the Stillinger girls as another pair altogether. Dang. So this guy must have been pretty angry.
I guess so.
Or girl, I guess. We don't know.
Probably a guy.
It's probably a girl.
No.
The night before the deaths, JB and Sarah were... JB is the father, by the way. I don't know why it's...
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Were at the local Presbyterian church watching their children perform Children's Day exercises. Lena and Ina also took part, and the 2 girls, aged 11 and 8, respectively, were invited to stay the night at the Moore home, because it seemed safer than having them walk home in the dark.
Uh-oh.
The young guests were in the downstairs bedroom, while the rest of the family was upstairs. Investigators determined Lena and Ina were the first victims, and that one of them had awakened, judging by a defensive wound that suggested she'd thrown up an arm to ward off a blow. You look like you have something to say.
No, I feel like... Are you saying... Is it Lana?
Lena. L-E-N-A, yeah.
Lena.
Lena, okay.
L-E... What?
L-E-N-A, is that... Does
Lena.
It matter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lena.
Anyway.
Sorry.
One neighbor told police Excuse me, I'm lost now. Investigators determined Lena first victims. It's possible that Sarah had also awoken during the attack. One neighbor told police she thought she heard Sarah's voice in the night yelling, oh dear, don't.
Just like that, too, I'm sure. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Don't.
The Adams Country Free Press reported all the bodies were found in a natural sleeping posture with heads beaten almost to a pulp.
Ugh.
It appeared the killer had taken pains to conceal himself. The blinds had been tightly drawn closed on the windows. Glass doors had been covered with articles of clothing. Even the mirrors inside the house had been shrouded.
Huh.
Interesting. The attack was not a robbery, as no valuables were taken or even disturbed.
What the heck?
It seemed that the killer wasn't in a rush. Police discovered 2 cigarette butts in the attic, implying that the killer, or killers, could have waited until the family were asleep before attacking them. In addition, the murderer had taken time to partially clean the murder weapon before leaving it propped against the wall of the downstairs bedroom.
Interesting.
It is interesting. Why would they leave it there?
I don't know. I don't know that I'd want to be seen leaving someone else's house
Oh, that's
with
a good point.
an
actually.
axe.
Well, if they were seen at all, though, like if someone saw them, they would know it was him, right? Or her.
I don't know. I don't know how many people are just like wielding axes in their free time. You never know.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if someone was to leave the house and someone saw them, no matter what, whether they had a weapon or not, they'd be the primary suspect.
I suppose.
Okay. The crime scene had some odd elements that still perplex researchers today. A slab of bacon was left leaning against the wall next to the axe, while another piece of bacon was found on the piano in the parlor. On the kitchen table was a plate of uneaten food and a bowl of bloody water. It's perhaps noteworthy, too, that Lena's nightgown had been pushed up, leaving her exposed. Although doctors determined she had not been sexually assaulted. The police made a crucial error in failing to immediately secure the crime scene, allowing dozens of people to trample through the murder house. One suspect even had a portion of skull in his possession that he bragged to several witnesses belonged to JB. However, he was able to plausibly explain that he had simply picked up the piece of bone off the floor while viewing the crime scene. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't know who in their right mind would be like,
It's so weird.
a whole family and other young children were just murdered in this house. Let me just go take a walkabout. Let me just go scope it out because I'm curious. Like,
Yeah, it's
I
weird.
feel like that says things about you, not good things.
The investigators' best guess was that the killer must have been a relative of the family, and early reports tossed out some names: Samuel Moyer, a brother-in-law of JB, and John Van Gilder, a former brother-in-law of Sarah. Moyer was, in fact, arrested, but later discounted because he had an alibi. Townspeople racked their brains for clues and alerted police to every stranger they'd seen or unusual scenario they'd witnessed. Groups of local people also searched barns and outbuildings, hoping to catch the killer. May Van Gilder, JB, and Sarah's 16-year-old niece said that the Saturday before the murder, a stranger had asked her where the Moores lived. Asking where they live a week before the murder? Interesting. When the girl later told Sarah of the inquiry, Sarah reportedly replied that someone matching the stranger's description had been hanging around the Moore home. That exchange prompted police to arrest a man in blood-stained shoes named Joe Ricks in Monmouth, Illinois. When May traveled to identify him, she said they had the wrong man. A character named C.M. Brown then reached out. Why do people just have blood-soaked shoes just randomly?
I don't know.
And how? So weird. A character named C.M. Brown then reached out to detectives and offered to obtain an image of the killer from the retina of Lena. The theory was that because Lena had woken, this last sight she saw was the killer, and that image would be imprinted on her retina, much like a photograph.
Oh my gosh.
When did this take place again?
I was just about to say, is this the early 1900s?
I think so. Yeah, 1912.
They should definitely know that's not how that works.
Well, how would they get...
Let me just take a mental picture real quick by
Yeah.
blinking.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb. I don't know how they... Okay, it's known as optography. This was thought to be a serious possibility at the beginning of the 19th century. Detectives agreed, and Brown said he recovered an image that indicates a man of stout build, very broad shoulders, and extraordinary length between the shoulders and hips. Unsurprisingly, this avenue proved another dead end. However, some tips were more promising. Cora McCoy, who lived 2 blocks from the Moore house, said she saw 2 strangers walk by at about 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. the day of the murders. The men walked close together as if talking confidentially. McCoy said she saw them again at dusk. One of them looked like a man named William Blackie Mansfield, a supposed army deserter and cocaine fiend, who 2 years after the Villisca murders was a suspect in the similar axe slaying of his wife, daughter, father-in-law, and mother-in-law.
So many people are just getting killed by axes. Like, what is up with axes? Like, have you heard of, like, the Axeman of New Orleans? Another axe murderer. Crazy.
Huh.
Yep.
Another neighbor of the Moore family, Mary Landers, also saw two strangers walking toward their house. She said they paused to look at Moore's axe, which was in a chopping block in the yard. Several witnesses said that they spotted Iowa Senator Frank F. Jones and his son, Albert, in town at the same time of the murders. On the surface, this might seem harmless, but J.B. had worked for the elder Jones farming equipment company before leaving to start a competing business. Jones was reportedly upset by his departure and by his nabbing of a lucrative John Deere contract. There were also rumors that J.B. was having an affair with Jones' daughter-in-law, Donna. It all made for bad blood, but was it enough to kill? Local men Fred Fryer, Frank Millhiller, and Vern Robinson reported seeing J.B. talking with Senator Jones' son, a few hours before the murder. Another man, Jim Bridewell, said he saw Albert Jones with Villisca Pool Hall owner W.B. Burt McCall. So many weird names back then. Just very complex, and everyone had a nickname. Garage owner E.M. Nelson said he spotted McCall behaving suspiciously and in a rush about 9 p.m. on the night of the slayings. These witness statements led to theories that Senator Jones, Albert Jones, Blackie Mansfield, and Burt McCall had worked together. A detective named James Wilkerson, who worked for the renowned Burns Detective Agency, was hired to investigate the killings after police came up empty-handed. In 1916, he announced he had solved it, stating that Senator Jones had hired Mansfield to murder J.B. for hurting his business. The theory was bolstered by testimony from Alice Willard, a local woman recruited by Wilkerson to help investigate the case. Willard said that on the night of the murder, she and two other women had driven home from Lincoln, Nebraska, when their car broke down near the Moore house. As she reached the back corner of the Moore lot, she saw 5 men talking in hushed voices. While she couldn't hear much of their conversation, she said she picked out some key words and phrases. Money, Sunday, after church, and get Joe first, the rest will be easy. She recognized one of the men as Senator Jones. Some investigators questioned why Alice Willard had waited 4 years to share her evidence. She claimed that she had been too afraid to come forward earlier. Wilkerson's claim to have cracked the case was heralded with huge headlines. Great crime at Villisca is now solved, read one from Marshalltown, Iowa. The story reported that Mansfield had not only been hired to kill J.B. Moore, but was also responsible for the double axe murder 4 days prior in Paola, Kansas, of Roland Hudson and his wife Anna, who were also murdered while they slept. 4 days prior, there's a... What is it, a triple homicide? Double homicide? With an axe.
Yeah, I think we've got an axe maniac on our hands.
Yeah, interesting. The allegations against Mansfield were brought before a grand jury, but Mansfield's employer provided records showing that he had been in Illinois at the time of the murders. Mansfield was never charged and later successfully sued the Burns Detective Agency in Wilkerson for $2,250, which was probably a lot of money back then.
I was going to say, I wonder what the conversion is.
As for Senator Jones, his career was ruined by the allegations, and he unsuccessfully attempted to sue Wilkerson for slander. Despite no charges being brought against Jones and Mansfield, Ross Moore and Joe Stillinger continued to believe Wilkerson's theory. Neither the Villisca nor the Paola killings were the only axe murders of the era. There was a string of similar killings throughout the Midwest, many of which were ascribed to Henry Lee Moore. No relation to the Moores of Villisca.
Well, that's convenient.
Moore was found guilty of the murder of his mother and grandmother in December 1912, and U.S. Department of Justice agent M.W. McClary theorized that he could be responsible for as many as 23 more.
Oh my gosh.
Including the Villisca Ax Murders. So we might have a serial killer on our hands here.
Indeed.
Of course, this case is unsolved. We already know that, but I feel like it might be that guy.
Who knows?
McClary pointed to similarities between the murder weapon. Each victim was slain in their homes with exceptional brutality. In each case, a bloody axe was found nearby. He also noted that the Ax murders started in late April 1911 and stopped in mid-December 1912, a window of time during which Henry Moore was out of prison.
Ooh.
In their book, The Man from the Train, Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James claimed that Paul Mueller, a German immigrant farmhand, was a serial killer who traveled by train and killed families with their own axes. The Villisca slaying is one of many killings they pinned on this elusive character. Some townspeople said that they had spotted Mueller shortly after midnight on the night of the murders, and he seemed to be in a rush. After the bodies were discovered, a nationwide manhunt ensued, with Mueller reportedly holding up in Wisconsin, New York, Pennsylvania, and beyond. He was never found. One suspect was actually tried for the Villisca deaths. The morning the bodies were found, a reverend by the name of Lynn George Kelly left Villisca by train at about 5:20 a.m. On the train, long before the bodies had been discovered, he allegedly told fellow travelers that there were 8 dead souls back in town who had been butchered in their beds.
Huh.
This reverend.
Is this, I don't know. Like he's saying that he said that?
Someone is saying that the reverend said that.
Maybe they just don't like this guy.
Like someone's trying to
I don't
pin
know.
it on him. I feel like back then it was probably pretty easy to
Yeah, I feel
frame
like
people.
I feel like you could pretty much just say he did it, and they'd be like, "Oh, he did it!"
Like the witch trials.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Word of this prompted investigators to take a close look at Kelly, who had arrived in town the morning of the murders and even attended the Children's Day in which the youngsters had performed. Kelly allegedly mailed a bundle of blood-soaked clothing to a laundry soon after the murders. 2 weeks later, he returned to Villisca and, posing as a detective, joined a tour of the murder house.
What the heck?
What the heck? They just let anyone in there, huh?
Pretty much.
That's crazy.
Also, how do you just like pose as a detective? Like,
Don't you need a license? Maybe it was a different time period, I guess. Early 1900s.
maybe you just put on like some type of pea coat and you're like, I'm a detective, and you carry around a little spyglass.
Like, yes.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Let me take a look at this crime scene, eh?
He inserted himself further into the case by claiming that at about 1 a.m., he had actually heard the thud of the axe that killed the 8 victims. Why would he be that close?
This sounds fishy to me.
It does sound kind of fishy. Kelly had a history of mental illness and related odd behavior. He was schizophrenic, there was no doubt about that, said Ed Epperly, a Ph.D. at Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. My aunt and uncle went to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa.
The more you know.
Fun fact, yeah. Who studied the case for nearly 40 years. I think the motive was sexual, is what Ed Epperly says.
But not
There was no
sign of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
And there was only the one girl that was noted to have her nightgown pulled up.
Yeah.
But that could also just have been pulled up like in a struggle.
Yeah, it could have been. Epperly points to the uplifted nightgown on one of the victims and draws a parallel between that and Kelly's habit of window peeking.
That's not nice.
Kelly had also been charged twice with sending obscene materials in the mail, asking young girls to pose nude for him.
Yep, he's a creep.
Mm-hmm. In 1917, a grand jury heard evidence against Kelly and indicted him for the Villisca murders. Huh?
Indicted.
Indicted. Does indicted have a C in it?
I'm pretty sure that's just how it's pronounced.
Indicted.
Indicted. I don't know, I kind of like indictive. Indicted.
As he awaited trial, Kelly even signed a confession to the murders, saying, God had told him, suffer the little children to come unto me, and slay utterly.
Slay!
However, Kelly recanted his confession at trial, and the jury deadlocked 11-1 for acquittal. A second jury acquitted Kelly in November 1917. Public opinion in Villisca was divided. Some residents thought Senator Jones was the culprit, while others were convinced Kelly was the killer. It really tore the community apart, said filmmaker Kelly Rundle, who made a 2004 movie about the murders called Villisca, Living with a Mystery. The case has also acquired a supernatural aura. The Villisca house has been investigated by numerous ghost hunters who claim to have encountered paranormal phenomena, helping to make the building a tourist attraction. Visitors can even stay there overnight.
I would do it. I'm sure that place is haunted.
I don't know. I don't really believe in all that kind of stuff, but
Well, I don't think you need to.
well, maybe it is.
I think it's an entire realm of possibility.
Yeah. While modern forensic science would probably have solved the Villisca case in 1912, even fingerprinting was still new, and law enforcement cooperation across state lines was poor.
Yep.
The result, the case has remained unsolved for over a century, and obviously it'll probably never get solved.
Yeah, probably.
So, what are your thoughts on this? Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting that there was a bunch of other axe murders that took place not
yeah,
too far.
I mean, I guess everyone probably had axes around
yeah.
for chopping wood and such.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess. But the story of the one guy that was killing people with their own axes, the serial killer.
Yeah, that was what the Axeman of New Orleans did too, I believe.
Really?
He went into people's homes, used their own axes to
Huh.
kill people, and would leave.
Huh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this story?
Hide your axes, I guess. I don't know.
No one has axes lying around anymore.
I don't know. My dad does in the garage.
My uncle does too.
Okay, so
But-
my point has been made.
I guess you're
Hide them.
All right, well, thanks for listening to the Villisca Ax Murders story. This is the Whispers of the Unknown podcast. We'll be making another episode later this week, so thanks for listening, you guys.